Assalamualaikum and good evening, everyone. Ramzan Mubarak to everyone, Eid Mubarak to everyone. We're coming back after an Eid break, and we've got a special guest for you here. Most of you know him from all his time playing for England. He also played 2 seasons for us at Islamabad. Stephen Finn is there. Finny, how are you, man? Finny, can you hear me? Wait. Can you hear me? Yeah. Finny?
Yeah, how's that? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Now I can.
There
I
we
thought
go. That's
we
better.
messed up again. We're having some technical issues here. We were trying to sort them out. That's why we were like a couple of minutes late. But getting back to our conversation, how's it been hanging like in England, like now with the ease down and everything? At least there'll be some cricket in the future.
Yes, yeah. It's been a strange 10 or 12 weeks or so for us over here. It's been particularly hard hit here with the virus. So yeah, to see the international guys back training now, I think is a good thing for us as a country, and to hopefully see some cricket at some stage in the not too distant future. And then progressively domestic stuff will start after that. So yeah, good news over here.
So how's it been? Like I know you've had injuries in the past, especially like last year and stuff like that. But this is the first time since probably you were what 17 that you've had like May and June, April, May, June with very little to do.
Yeah, it's been bizarre actually. I actually know what it feels like to be in a summer, because the weather has been so good over here for the last few weeks that it actually feels like I've got to enjoy a summer rather than always feel like there's a day in the field round the corner. So yeah, it's been nice in some ways to have a mental and physical break away from cricket. But now it's got to the stage where I think everyone is raring to go and ready to start up again. And I think as soon as we're given the go ahead by the government to be able to go out there and start training again, everyone's going to be very ready to do so.
So I wanted to ask you about like I know you're somebody who should still be at the peak of his power, even though I've heard I heard you say otherwise. But I wanted to talk to you about like you've had a decade, more than a decade actually, of international experience, and like you've been part of some extraordinary teams and some extraordinary dressing rooms, to be honest. So starting off, like one of the things that interested me was like I found it fascinating. I don't know how it came to be, but you played more tests against Pakistan than any other team. So and you've had success against them, especially if we look back to it past in 2016. So what's it been like facing Pakistan over the years? How did you differentiate like the 2010 team from say the 2016 team?
Yeah, it's been good fun. I've always, when I was playing in the under 19s, I played a lot against Pakistan as well. We had some really competitive, good series against Imad Wasim, Mohammed Amir, Ahmed Shahzad, Umar Amin, like lots of guys who have gone on to be very successful for Pakistan. So to get an early look at them when I was a kid was really good fun. And then, yeah, it's just Pakistan, very well known, obviously, for having great fast bowlers and have a great history of fast bowlers. And when I was young, I always grew up watching the great Pakistani fast bowlers on the TV. So to go out there and play against some of the guys that I've had to play against, sometimes they've not been great to have to face up against. I've had people, Wahab Riaz, trying to knock my head off at times, has been entertaining to watch, I'd imagine, but not entertaining to be a part of. But yeah, I just remember Pakistan always having great bowling teams, and I think that that's something that in both those series, both 2010 and 2016, and in between when we've played against each other in one-day cricket as well, it's it's always been the strength of the Pakistan bowling lineup that's impressed me.
So the thing that like sort of like pulled us towards you and like a lot of Pakistanis, not just because you played as so often against Pakistan, but a lot of Pakistanis rate you pretty highly, is because you even though you're not built like one, you're like you are built like an English bowler, but a lot of your best spells have been pretty much like a Pakistani with the old ball, reversing the ball. I go back to that Edgbaston one, or even the India ODI series that you had. That's probably, I think, the best you bowled with the white ball that at least that I've seen in international cricket. So, how did that expertise with the old ball come in, and like, did you always have that?
I think something that I was very fortunate to have when I was younger was access to a place called Loughborough here in England, which is where the National Cricket Academy is. And when we were younger, the bowling coach, who was Kevin Shine, who played domestic cricket over here in England and then became the bowling coach, used to rough up balls on one side on concrete and then give it to us and say, just go and have fun and experiment with what you can do with the ball and how you can make it swing. So I think from when I was very young, I was exposed to being able to bowl with a reverse swinging ball and working out how you could get it to do and how you would set a batsman up to try and get them out. So, yeah, some of my favourite spells in international cricket have come from using a reverse swinging ball, and that's both in Test and One Day international cricket. So, I think being exposed to that very young, and then also in England at Lords, the wickets when I first started used to be very dry and very slow, which are what Pakistani and subcontinental wickets tend to be like. So having had that when I was younger, to be able to use those skills in first class cricket and then move that into the international game, I think helped me very much. And it's fun to bowl with a reverse swinging ball. Some of my favourite spells that I've ever watched have been reverse swing bowling, mainly by Pakistani bowlers, and watching them blow people's stumps out the ground. So it's something that I wanted to emulate.
So which one is your favorite and the best spell that you believe that you bowled, or even if you didn't have the wickets, like when you, because especially if I look at somebody like you, you've always been a rhythm bowler. Once your run up is when you're running in downhill, then it feels like I remember Watto saying that you were the most difficult, that those guys played in the 2010 Ashes as well. So when did you feel the best, when there were no niggles and like you felt like you were running downhill?
I think there was a series against, actually, so there was a winter, the 2010-11 winter for us. So from October through to February, we had a tour of India, which is the one I think you're talking about, where we played, and they were an outstanding team. They actually beat us 5-0 in the series, but I personally had a good series, taking wickets in that one. But having to bowl against MS Dhoni, Kohli, Yuvraj Singh, guys like that who just wanted to come out and smash you everywhere, and to do well in that series, I think gave me confidence, and I just felt like I was in perfect rhythm at that time, and could just run in and bowl exactly what I wanted. And then after Christmas that year in February, we came to the UAE to play against Pakistan in Abu Dhabi and Dubai, and I think actually in that series, I think we beat Pakistan, but I got 2 fourthers in the first 2 ODIs of that series, and that's probably, those 2 games are 2 of the best rhythm I think I've ever been in the course of my career. So yeah, that 6-month period between October 2011 and March 2012, I think, is probably when I felt my absolute best.
And those weren't exactly, helpful pitches. Like the 5-0 against India that you mentioned, and the 4-0 that you guys won against Pakistan in the UAE, like those are as difficult pitches. I know that they're not as difficult as, say, Trent Bridge has been the last 4 years, but like they're slow, and like especially for somebody like you who relies on bounce and like extra pace, especially at that part of your career, those didn't seem to be helpful. But everyone who saw you at that time, especially people from here in Asia who tend to rate bowlers depending on condition and stuff like that, really felt like you, for somebody that was that young, you were really smart. And the Loughborough thing sort of makes sense. So I wanted to expand on that. Like, we tend to think of England and English coaches, and especially English cricket, as something which is stuffy and which is very conservative. So allowing you the stuff that you mentioned at Loughborough? Like, were you surprised by that?
I think, yeah, maybe slightly, but when I did that, I'd have been 15 or 16 years old. So I think that they've always been conscious that us as English players haven't been very good when we've come to play in Asia, because it is a very difficult place to come and bowl. And I think that our strength has always been seam and swing bowling, but conventional swing bowling. So I think that they were conscious that they wanted the next batch of young players who were coming through to be competent at bowling in those conditions, so that we could go there and win games and win series. So I think you look at a few of the guys who are coming through now. Mark Wood's a good reverse swing bowler. Chris Wokes is a good reverse swing bowler. All us guys are the same age and would have come through the system at the same time. So it does take a little while for those things to come to fruition, but you can certainly see the things that they were trying to do at that stage bearing fruit now when it comes to being more competent at playing in subcontinental conditions.
And the other thing you mentioned was playing at Lords all these years. You've been at Middlesex for like, I don't know how long, but so has it ever, like, do you ever pinch yourself, or do you ever feel like has it ever sunk in that you're in that dressing room like for what, 8, 10, 12 times a year, just with your domestic team, and considering everything that's gone on in that ground and in those dressing rooms, does it ever like overwhelm you, or does it ever sink in?
It's, to be honest, no. I'm just so fortunate to have stumbled upon playing for Middlesex, because when I was young, I grew up just outside of London in a place called Hertfordshire, which over here there are two different types of first class of cricket team. You've got a minor county, which is a Hertfordshire, Herefordshire, places like that, and then you've got the 18 major counties. So the major counties will go looking to the minor counties to provide good young players to be able to represent them potentially in the future. So when I was 14, I got approached by Middlesex to come and be part of their academy. And I think also at the same time, Essex were interested in me because I didn't have an affiliation with a major team. One of those two teams wanted me, or both of those teams wanted me. So yeah, I think Lords was one of the things that when I sat down with my parents when I was that old, and we sort of chatted about what I wanted to do, I think the pull of being able to call Lords your home ground was one of the very big things that that dragged me towards that. And yeah, I've been incredibly fortunate to be able to play a lot of games at Lords, both internationally and domestically. And I think that, yeah, it's still such a special place every time. I think when you've been there as well, when you walk through the gates and you're walking around the ground and you see the tradition that is there, and especially when you're sat in the dressing room and you just think about the people who have sat in that exact spot before you and watched the game and played in games there. Yeah, it's quite overwhelming at times. So yeah, I'm very fortunate, and it's probably not quite sunk in. I actually don't think it will until I finish playing, and when you haven't done it for a year or so and you realize how special it was to be able to go there every day and call that your home ground. So yeah, just I think probably ask me that question when I've retired and I might have a different answer.
Yeah, I think you're getting like a trailer of that this summer, and I think you're probably missing it as well. But I
Very much.
mean, for a 14-year-old, you really made the right decision. So going on towards like I want to talk to you about that England dressing room. We've had this conversation before as well, but like at the time from like 2010 till about 2013, England were the best team in the world and everything, and you were part of that dressing room, but you weren't like one of the quote unquote big boys, right? You were like an observer as much as anything else. So how did that sort of like underscore your view towards culture and stuff like that? Because there's a dichotomy in cricket right now between like guys who believe that culture leads to wins, and guys who think that wins are like purely based on talent and culture is like a byproduct of winning.
I think they go hand in hand, because I think that in order to get the best and the most out of people and for people to fulfill their talent, I think that you need to have a good environment. So I think of when I've played in good teams, and the Islamabad United team, when we won the tournament in 2018, you look at the environment that we had there and the camaraderie that we had. that allowed people to come in, and especially the young guys who won a lot of games for us that year and performed very well. It's the culture that really breeds that and allows those young guys to flourish. So I was very fortunate in that dressing room. I had people in there who encouraged me to be myself, encouraged me to go out there and try and just try my hardest and be the best that I could possibly be. And I think that they definitely do come hand in hand, because I think that in a broken environment where people are timid and aren't allowed to fulfill their potential, I think that's a dangerous place. So yeah, very much the environment and the talent that you get out of people both go hand in hand.
Yeah, I mean, talking about the 2018 thing, I remember even the year before in 2017, I talked to Wasim Bhai. Actually, Wasim Akram once talked to me about you, and he was like, there's only one thing missing in Finney. And I was like, what is that? He said that he doesn't have a massive ego. And like, if you want to be like a fast bowler, you need to enter every ground like you own this place. And I told Wasim Bhai, that's just you, Waqar, and Shoaib Akhtar. Like, that's not the normal thing.
Well, those guys are special, aren't they? And I think that you look at, and you can't force those things. I don't think. I think those things come naturally, and you look at the guys who are the real greats, and those three are obviously greats of the game. And I look at the guys, the great players that I've played with, and they have an aura about them. And when they walk into a dressing room, they just have something special, and they command that dressing room, and out on the field as well, they command that respect. So yeah, I think that's something that maybe over the course of my career I could have tried to impose myself more in that scenario. But I also believe that I play and bowl better when I'm happy and I'm smiling, as opposed to being angry and
Pretending to be
snarling all the
someone else.
time.
Yeah,
So yeah,
that's the thing.
I
I was
think
going
that,
to say you can't pretend to be someone else.
no, I don't think so. I don't think so. And I would love to bowl like Wasim Bhai, really. I would love to be able to walk into a ground and know that if someone threw me an apple, I could still swing it both ways if I wanted to. Like, I wish I had that talent, but I don't, unfortunately.
Yeah, just before the next question, just something that I reminded me of. I remember one of the days at the ICC Academy, you were bowling to Misbah at one stage, and Wasim Bhai just turns to me and says, "Why doesn't Finney get him out like every other ball?" And I'm like, "That's a guy with like averaging 15 Test cricket. Like, come on." He's like, "No, he's a four ball batsman. I know how to get him out in four balls." And I'm like, you can say that." So
Well, I think
anyway,
that might be. Do you remember
yeah,
that session he bowled, didn't he? He picked up the ball and he
yeah,
bowled,
yeah, yeah.
I think. And everyone talks about the white ball not swinging these days, and new ball bowlers can't swing the white ball. I watched him for about an hour. He had this ball and he was shining it perfectly every ball, and he swung it pretty much every ball exactly the way that he wanted to. So they do swing.
Yeah, the backstory to that was like we had some issues with the catering that day, so we had to have lunch after the session, and Wasim Bhai needed to have it before because he needed to have his insulin right after he got his food. So he was angry, and the only thing that he knew what to do in that stage was to get into the nets and like make a fool out of, like, I think Sam Billings and Ben Duckett and Watto. I forget who there were like four guys who all came up to me and said that he needs to play for us.
Yeah.
So anyway, so another thing that reminded me of like something from 2017, you said, I remember we were sitting at the Dubai Stadium for that ad shoot, and you mentioned to Watto like that you never realized, Watto, that you were such a nice person. So I just wanted to ask you about like your experiences of playing with Australia and like interacting with those Aussie guys who sort of take sports a little too seriously, shall we say?
Yeah,
And like how that relates to like your experiences with them.
yeah, but I think the Ashes rivalry is really the one that when you're growing up here in England, it's the one that everyone talks about. And when you're young and you're playing, it's the one that if you do well in Ashes series over here, that's how you are judged. I suppose the same for Pakistani cricketers would be how you do against India will ultimately be how you're judged by the public and by people. So there's already that added edge that you know when you're going into a game that this is really what you're being judged on. And your career is almost defined by how many Ashes you've won, how well you personally have done against Australia. So everyone knows that going into it. So it's quite an intense environment, knowing that both teams are really desperate to win, and desperate to win quite convincingly so that you can embarrass the other side. So all the time when you're playing against Australia, it's hard fought, and every single session of every game it's tough cricket, and there's people getting stuck into each other. I had some good run-ins with Watto when we were playing against each other, both batting and bowling. You'd be going at each other. Off the pitch, people don't really say hello to each other that much, because you really intensely want to win. So yeah, when I realised that I was playing in the same Islamabad United team as Watto that time, I was like, I don't know whether he ever liked me, whether he thought I was any good as a bowler, because there's always that facade when you're in the middle of a series that you never get to break down. But yeah, once we got there, and that year we had Brad Haddin and Watto in the same team, and I'd had these intense Ashes rivalries against them for years and years. So then to be able to share a dressing room with them and have dinner with them was a great experience. Hassan?
Yeah. Sorry
Hassan,
about
there
that.
we go.
Yeah,
I didn't know whether you wanted me to tell a couple of jokes or something there whilst I was by myself.
No, actually you can. I was gonna just finish it off. I think my internet's acting up, so might as well. So I'll just finish it off with like a few quick fires. Like you were mentioning the Aussie guys. So what's the worst sledge that you've ever gotten from that, or the funniest? Like if you're afraid of telling the worst one.
Well, I think the most brutal one I've ever had was I was playing in my first Ashes game at the Gabba in Brisbane against Australia when I'd have been 21. So it was only my 8th or 9th Test match, I think, and we had been bowled out for 200 on the first day, and then Australia were batting, and Brad Haddin actually was, I think he was on about 150, 140 or 150, and every time he hit the ball out to a fielder off me and he ran past me, he just told me I was useless. He said, "You're hopeless. You're useless. You're no good." Every single time. And it was relentless. It got to the stage where I was like, if this is what Ashes cricket's like, every time someone walks past me and they tell me I'm useless, then I don't know if I want to do it anymore. But it was interesting. But yeah, you sort of, the one thing about Australians is you can gain their respect by doing well, or competing against them, and that's both on the field and off the field with the public and stuff. So in that series where we beat them in 2010-11, I think we earned a lot of respect from the Australians there, both the public and the players.
So is that the 2010 Ashes series? Is that you considered like the highlight of your career, like the peak of it, essentially?
I think so. I think for various reasons.
I mean, you guys are the only English team to win an Ashes in what, 35 years in Australia?
I think it. Yeah, I think it was 20. It's either 24 or 27 years, something like that, until since we'd won it. Yeah, 24 years actually. It was 1986-7, I think, last time we won it. But at the time, I didn't realise what a big deal it was, because it was my first Ashes series. I'd only played 7 or 8 Test matches in the build up to that, and I didn't quite understand how big a deal it was. It's only subsequently, when we've gone down there and been absolutely hammered 2 times, 4-0 and 5-0, that when you look back on that series and beating Australia 3-1 in that series, you realise now what a big deal it was, and why the guys who had played in Australia before really enjoyed that one more than winning any other series. So yeah, but looking back on it now, it's probably the proudest moment of my career, is being able to achieve that.
Yeah, and I remember even I think was it the Perth test or the MCG test where you went off against them? Like I think that was the one that was mentioned. But before anything else acts up, I'll just finish it off with like a couple of other questions. Firstly, who's the best batsman that you ever bowled to?
I actually, and I'm not just saying this because we spoke about him, but whenever anyone's asked me this over the last 10 years, I've found Watto the hardest to bowl at. And I've bowled at Kohli, I've bowled at all the good players in international cricket. But there was something about Watto, how quick he picked up length. So, and by that I mean how quick he saw whether it was a full ball or a short ball at you. And he just always seemed to take great pleasure in just trying to hit every ball for 4 or 6 off you, because he's such a big person and he has the power to be able to do that. So yeah, I've always found bowling at Watto the hardest.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, the Pakistani guys here talk about Matthew Hayden that way, like from that generation of like this guy who was like bigger and stronger than even them. Like there's like an intimidation factor that comes in over there. And just to finish off, like another question like that I've asked everyone pretty much that's been on here. That's like who's the best captain that you've played under? Because you've played under a lot of people.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate to play under some outstanding captains, but I think that Andrew Strauss was probably the best one for me. That team that we took from sort of the doldrums in 2009, I joined the team in 2010, and all the way to being the #1 team in the world in 2011-12, I think was an amazing achievement. And his leadership was a big part of that. And I think if you speak to anyone who was involved in that team, the direction and the strength of character that he had as a leader, I think, was very important for that team. And as we spoke about earlier, created the environment to be able to let people thrive. And I think he was very good at that.
And I think his post-career stuff has pretty much shown like how much talent he has in understanding people and understanding systems that way as well. So I've taken like way too much of your time, more than I asked you for. So
It's
best of
okay.
luck with the summer, best of luck with Middlesex, and I hope Watford survive like somehow
So
with
do
the
I.
League Cup. Yeah. So best of luck to them as well. So see you then, Finney.
Thank you. Thanks
We
for
were
having me. Nice
supposed
to
to
see
meet
you.
up like yeah, we were supposed to meet up like we met up like last summer. And we were supposed to meet up this summer with Pakistan coming to England, but I don't think that's gonna happen. So see you when I see you.
We'll do it another time. Yeah.
Cheers, man.
Take care, mate.